Admiral Zexathera stood frozen in front of the massive display screen. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous habit from her species that showed deep confusion. The holographic image showed the smoking ruins of Kepler Station, the most protected military base in the entire hegemony territory. "Run it again," she whispered to her aide, Lieutenant Vorth. The young officer's tentacles moved across the control panel with practiced ease. The battle recording started over. Admiral Zexathera watched as a single human ship approached the station. The vessel looked like someone had welded together spare parts from a junkyard. Its hull was covered in patches of different metals. Strange. Symbols and words in human language were painted across its side. The ship's name read UES Defiant Paradox in bold white letters. Kepler Station was no joke. It had 50 heavy plasma cannons, energy shields that could stop a small moon, and a garrison of 10,000 soldiers. 3 separate alien fleets had tried to take this station over the past 3 years. All had failed with massive losses. The recording showed the human ship doing something impossible. It flew straight at the station's main defense grid. The plasma cannons fired. Bright blue energy beams shot toward the small vessel. Then something strange happened. Half the shots seemed to pass right through the ship like it was made of air. The other half hit something that looked like shimmering water around the ship's hull. "Computer, analyze the defensive systems on that human vessel," Admiral Zexathera ordered. "Unable to identify defensive technology," the computer replied in its flat voice. "Energy patterns do not match any known shield types in the database." The recording continued. The human ship fired back with weapons that made no sense. Instead of energy beams or missiles, it launched what looked like glowing balls of light that changed colors as they flew. When these strange projectiles hit, the station's shields, the barriers didn't just fail. They seemed to forget they were supposed to exist. "Impossible," muttered Dr. Kethmore, the station's chief science officer. His crystal body flickered with patterns that showed deep worry. "Those aren't weapons. I don't know what they are." The most shocking part came next. The human ship somehow got inside the station's shield bubble without breaking through it. Security cameras showed human soldiers running through the corridors. But these weren't normal soldiers. They moved like they were having fun. Some of them were laughing. One human stopped to pat a confused alien guard on the head before stunning him with a weapon that looked like a child's toy. Admiral Zexathera paused the recording. "How many humans boarded the station?" "Sensors show 12 life signs," Lieutenant Vorth reported. 12 humans took control of a station defended by 10,000 troops." "That's not possible." "The evidence suggests otherwise, Admiral." The final part of the recording was the worst. The station's commander, General Kraz, appeared on the main communication channel to surrender. Behind him, a human female with short brown hair was sitting in his command chair, eating something from a small bag. "Attention, hegemony forces," the human said with her mouth full. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiant Paradox. Your station now belongs to the Terran Defense Force. Please exit in an orderly fashion. Oh, and thanks for the snacks in your break room. The purple ones taste like grape soda." General Kraz, a warrior who had never retreated in his entire career, looked completely defeated. She asked nicely," he said to Admiral Zexathera later during his debriefing. "And somehow that made it impossible to say no. Also, her ship's computer started playing music throughout our entire station. Very loud music, with lyrics about never giving up." Admiral Zexathera turned off the recording. Around the command center, her staff stood in stunned silence. The implications were terrifying. If one human ship could take their strongest fortress in 4 hours, what could a human fleet do? "Sir," said Communications Officer Yilk, his voice shaking. "We're receiving a message from Earth Command." "Put it through." The screen showed a middle-aged human male in a simple military uniform. He had gray hair and kind eyes. but something about his smile made Admiral Zex Thara's skin crawl. "Greetings, Admiral," the human said. "I'm General Rodriguez, Terran Defense Force. I understand you have questions about Captain Chen's recent mission." "How?" Admiral Zex Thara asked simply. "How what? How did 12 humans defeat 10,000 trained soldiers? How did your ship ignore our most advanced weapons? How did you take a station that has never fallen?" General Rodriguez shrugged. "Captain, Chen and her crew are just really good at their job. That's not an answer." "Sure it is. Look, Admiral, I know this is confusing. Trust me, it confuses us too sometimes. But Sarah has a gift for making impossible things work out. Always has. Ever since flight school." Dr. Kethmore stepped forward. "General, our sensors recorded energy patterns that violate several basic laws of physics. Your ship's weapons appear to fire concentrated impossibility." "That sounds about right," General Rodriguez agreed cheerfully. "Chen's always been creative, with the technical specifications." "This is madness," Admiral Zexthera snapped. "Ships cannot run on creativity. Weapons cannot fire impossibility. Physics has rules." "Oh, absolutely," the general said. "Physics definitely has rules. Humans just have a different relationship with those rules than most species. We tend to think of them more as guidelines." The communication ended, leaving Admiral Zexathara staring at a blank screen. Around her, the command staff waited for orders. "What do you do when faced with an enemy that doesn't follow the basic laws of reality?" "Contact the Galactic Confederation," she finally said. "Emergency session. Priority Alpha." Within 6 hours, representatives from every major species in the galaxy were connected via quantum communication link. The discussion that followed would change galactic politics forever. "The humans are clearly using some form of advanced technology," insisted Ambassador Veltar of the Etherian Empire. "We must discover their secrets." "Agreed," rumbled Commander Shakth of the Vorthon Military Council. "No species achieves such results without superior weapon systems." But Admiral Zexathara wasn't so sure. She had fought humans before, during the border conflicts 5 years ago. Back then, they had been tough but predictable. Their ships followed normal physics. Their weapons worked like everyone else's weapons. Something had changed. "I don't think it's technology," she said slowly. "I think it's something else. Something specifically human." The assembled aliens considered this. In the depths of space, the UES Defiant Paradox was already heading toward its next mission. Captain Chen sat in her command chair, drinking coffee from a mug that read "Galaxy's #1 Mom" and reviewing mission reports. "Jenkins," she called to her chief engineer, "how's the quantum flux thingy holding up?" "You mean the coffee maker modification?" came a voice from the engineering section. "Running smooth as butter, Captain. The universe seems to like the way it hums." "Excellent. Prepare for jump to the Arcturus system. Apparently, there's a hegemony battle group there that needs some attitude adjustment." Captain Chen smiled and took another sip of coffee. Behind her, the rest of her crew prepared for another impossible mission. None of them seemed worried. After all, they were human. Impossible was just another word for haven't tried hard enough yet. In the depths of space, physics quietly rearranged itself to accommodate whatever the humans were about to do next. The universe had learned that it was easier to just go along with human plans than to try explaining why they shouldn't work. 3 weeks after the Kepler station incident, the greatest minds in the galaxy gathered in the neutral zone aboard the research vessel Unity of Knowledge. Dr. Kethmore floated in his crystal suspension tank, his body flickering with complex mathematical equations. Beside him, Professor Yith Andra of the Etherian Science Council manipulated holographic data with her 6 delicate arms. At the far end of the massive laboratory, the Vorthon war computer Brutus 7 hummed quietly as it processed battle data at impossible speeds. "This makes no sense," Dr. Kethmore announced for the 5th time that day. His crystal body flashed red with frustration. The energy readings from their weapon systems show negative entropy. That's impossible. Professor Yithandra's ethereal form shimmered with agreement. The Etherian Quantum Institute has been studying their engine signatures. The humans appear to be using a faster-than-light drive that shouldn't work. According to our calculations, their ship should have exploded the moment they turned it on. Correction, rumbled Brutus 7 in its mechanical voice. Analysis of battlefield recordings shows the human vessel has exploded 17 times during combat. It simply chooses to ignore this fact and continues operating. The assembled scientists fell silent. Around them, holographic displays showed every piece of data they had collected about the UES Defiant paradox. Energy patterns that changed when no one was looking. Hull composition that tested as metal determination and coffee stains. Weapon. Signatures that registered as conceptually aggressive. Perhaps we should examine the crew records, suggested Dr. Zintai, the Aquarian psychological analyst. Her tentacles moved gracefully through the water-filled section of the lab. Understanding. The humans might help us understand their technology. The main display changed to show personnel files. Captain Sarah Chen's record appeared first. Born on Earth Colony World, New Texas. Graduated bottom of her class from the Terran Space Academy. Disciplinary actions for creative interpretation of orders and excessive use of duct tape in critical repairs. Current mission status. Somehow still alive despite everything. Look at this, Dr. Zintai said, her voice bubbling through the water. Captain Chen was assigned to command the Defiant paradox as punishment duty. The ship was supposed to be decommissioned. Chief Engineer Marcus Jenkins Johnson's file came up next. Former civilian mechanic from Detroit. No formal military training. Joined the Space Force after his garage was destroyed in an alien raid. Special skills listed as makes things work that shouldn't, and optimistic attitude toward impossible problems. The files continued. Weapons Officer Lisa Boom Boom Martinez, former demolitions expert turned artist. Navigation Officer Chen Wei, no relation to the captain, who had failed his navigation exams 3 times but had never gotten lost. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Patricia Patch Williams, who had been kicked out of medical school for unorthodox treatment methods, but had never lost a patient. They're all misfits, Professor Yathandra observed. Failures, rejects, and problem cases. How does such a crew achieve impossible victories? Dr. Kethmore had been quietly analyzing the personnel data. His crystal body suddenly flashed bright, blue with realization. Wait, look at their psychological profiles. Every single crew member shows the same pattern. The displays changed to show mental evaluation charts. Every human on the ship scored extremely high in 3 specific areas: creative problem-solving, refusal to accept failure, and something the human psychologists called determination to prove everyone wrong. This is it, Dr. Kethmore announced. The secret isn't their technology, it's their attitude. But how could attitude affect reality? The scientists decided to test their theory. They arranged a direct communication link with Captain Chen herself. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Defiant paradox. It looked like a military command center that had been decorated by enthusiastic children. Colorful. Lights blinked randomly. Someone had drawn smiley faces on several control panels. A small plant sat next to the weapons console, and classical music played softly in the background. Captain Chen appeared on screen, sitting in a command chair that was obviously held together with several different types of tape. She was drinking coffee from a mug shaped like a cartoon cat and eating what looked like a sandwich. "Hey there," she said cheerfully. "I hear you folks want to know how our ship works. That's nice. Most people just shoot at us." Dr. Kethmore leaned forward eagerly. "Captain, we've analyzed your vessel's energy signatures. Your main drive system appears to violate thermodynamics." "Oh, that," Captain Chen said, taking another bite of her sandwich. Jenkins modified the coffee maker to interface with the quantum flux capacitor. Turns out the universe really likes good coffee. Professor Yathandra's form shimmered with confusion. But that's impossible. Coffee makers cannot affect space-time. Sure they can, came a voice from off-screen. A tall human with grease-stained coveralls walked into view. You just have to ask nicely. Also helps if you share. The ship gets grumpy if it doesn't get its morning coffee. This was Jenkins, the chief engineer. He looked completely serious as he explained how their faster-than-light drive was powered by caffeinated beverages and positive thinking. Your weapon systems, Dr. Kethmore pressed on. They fire impossible projectiles. Boom Boom figured out. How to weaponize the concept of know you, Captain Chen explained. When someone shoots at us, our guns basically tell the universe to redirect the attack back at them. Works great, though it does use up a lot of snark. The assembled scientists looked at each other in growing panic. These humans were describing technology that shouldn't exist, powered by emotions and beverages, operated by people who thought impossible problems were just puzzles waiting to be solved. But how do you make it work? Professor Yathandra asked desperately. What's your secret? Captain Chen shrugged. No secret. We just refuse to believe it won't work. Jenkins in engineering has a saying, if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. Also, added Jenkins, helps that we're too stubborn to die. Ship knows we'll just keep trying until something works, so it usually just skips ahead to the part where we succeed. Dr. Zintai tried a different approach. Captain, surely you understand that your ship violates several fundamental laws of physics. Laws are just suggestions with government backing, Captain Chen replied cheerfully. Besides, physics always struck me as more of a guidelines kind of thing, like speed limits or expiration dates. The communication continued for another hour. Every answer the humans gave made less sense than the last. They described impossible repairs made with household items. They talked about their ship's computer like it was a pet. They mentioned casually that their navigation system sometimes got homesick and automatically plotted courses toward Earth. When the link finally ended, the assembled scientists sat in stunned silence. The greatest minds in the galaxy had just spent an hour listening to humans explain how they had broken reality through sheer, stubborn optimism. This is a threat to all civilized society, Brutus 7 announced. If other species learn these methods, chaos will follow. But Dr. Kethmore wasn't so sure. No, he said slowly. I don't think other species can do this. It requires something, specifically human. The ability to look at impossible odds and think, challenge accepted. Professor Yathandra was already planning experiments. Her people were logical and graceful, but maybe they could learn human techniques. The Vorthans were considering adding creative stubbornness to their military training programs. None of them noticed the small smile on Dr. Zintai's face. As a psychologist, she understood something the others had missed. The humans weren't breaking the laws of physics. They were living in a universe that apparently had a sense of humor, and they were the only species funny enough to get the joke. In the depths of space, the UES Defiant Paradox continued on its mission, powered by coffee and crew who treated the impossible as just another item on their to-do list. Supreme Admiral Krexivor of the Hegemony stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable. Around him stretched the most powerful battle fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 300 ships of various sizes filled the space around, the massive dreadnought. Each vessel represented the finest military technology that 5 different alien species could produce. Status report, Krexivor demanded, his voice echoing through the command center. All ships report ready for combat, replied his aide, Commander Thelvan. Energy weapons at full charge, missile systems loaded, fighter squadrons prepared for launch. Krexivor nodded grimly. The humiliation at Kepler Station would not be repeated. One human ship had made the entire hegemony look weak. Today, that would be corrected with overwhelming force. The fleet had tracked the UES Defiant Paradox to the Magellan Nebula, a region of space filled with colorful gas clouds and electrical storms. It was a perfect place for an ambush, with plenty of cover for their ships. More importantly, representatives from every major galactic power were hidden throughout the nebula, watching and recording everything that was about to happen. "Sir," called out the sensor officer. "Target approaching. Single human vessel, just as reported." On the main display, the Defiant Paradox came into view. It looked even worse than the intelligence reports had suggested. The hull was covered with patches of different metals, making it look like a quilt made of scrap parts. Strange markings and symbols covered every available surface. Most disturbing of all, someone had painted a cartoon character on the nose of the ship. It was grinning and making a gesture that was probably rude in several languages. "This is what? Defeated our forces?" Krexivor asked in disbelief. "Confirmed, sir. That's the vessel. The Supreme Admiral activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Krexivor. Today we restore the honor of the hegemony. Show no mercy. Destroy that ship completely." But before he could give the attack order, a transmission came from the human vessel. Captain Chen's face appeared on every screen in the fleet. "Hey there, hegemony folks," she said cheerfully, still holding that ridiculous coffee mug. "Nice fleet you've got there. Really impressive. Must have taken a lot of paperwork to get all those ships in one place." Krexivor leaned forward angrily. "Human, you are outnumbered 300 to 1. Surrender now and your death will be quick." Captain Chen took a sip of coffee and appeared to consider this. "That's a generous offer, but I'm going to have to pass. See, my crew and I have this thing about giving up. We're really bad at it." "Then you will die." "Maybe," Captain Chen agreed. "But probably not. Jenkins, are you ready down there?" "All systems showing green, Captain," came a voice from somewhere off-screen. "Well, except for the artificial gravity. That's showing purple. But it seems happy about it." "Excellent. Weapons?" "Boom boom here, Captain. All weapons charged and ready to party." "Navigation?" Chen Wei reporting. "I have no idea where we are, but I'm pretty sure we're supposed to be here." "Medical?" Dr. Williams standing by. "I've got coffee, Band-Aids, and optimism. We're ready for anything." Captain Chen turned back to face Krexivor. "See? We're all set. Oh, and Admiral? You might want to tell your people to buckle up. We're about to initiate protocol. Hold my beer." Before Krexivor could ask what that meant, the human ship did something that made every sensor on every ship in the fleet scream warnings at once. The Defiant Paradox split into 5 identical copies of itself. "Impossible!" shouted the sensor officer. "Matter cannot be duplicated like that." But there they were, 5 human ships, each looking exactly like the original. They spread out in a formation that somehow looked both tactical and cheerful at the same time. "All ships, open fire!" Krexivor commanded. 300 alien warships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, plasma torpedoes, and exotic particle weapons filled the space between the two forces. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. The human ships responded by doing things that hurt to watch. One of the Defiant Paradox copies flew straight into the path of incoming missiles. Instead of being destroyed, it somehow convinced the missiles to turn around and attack their own launching ships. Another copy fired what looked like giant soap bubbles that made entire sections of the hegemony fleet temporarily transparent. A third ship started playing music so loud that it overloaded audio systems throughout the entire nebula. But the worst part came when the 4th copy of the human ship decided to ram the flagship directly. "Brace for impact!" Krexivor shouted. The human ship slammed into the inevitable at full speed. But instead of the expected explosion, something impossible happened. The human vessel passed through the massive dreadnought like it was made of fog, somehow damaging it from the inside as it went. "Hull breach on decks 12 through 37, reported the damage control officer. "But, sir, there are no holes. The damage is just there." How is this possible? Krexvor demanded. His question was answered when Captain Chen's voice crackled over all communication channels. Oh, that's easy. We shifted into theoretical mode. Technically, we exist only as a probability wave right now. Makes it really hard to hit us, but we can still mess with your stuff. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human ship, or ships, or whatever they were now, performed maneuvers that made experienced pilots weep. They fired weapons that seemed to be powered by pure sarcasm. At one point, they launched missiles that traveled backward through time to hit targets before the weapons were even fired. The most humiliating moment came when one of the Defiant Paradox copies somehow got inside the flagship's shield envelope and started towing away entire sections of the hegemony fleet. The human crew was actually humming while they worked. "Admiral," Commander Thelvan said quietly, "perhaps we should consider retreat." Krexvor stared at the tactical display. Of his 300 ships, only 50 were still combat-capable. The rest were either destroyed, disabled, or had somehow been convinced to switch sides. The human vessel was completely undamaged and was now doing barrel rolls through a formation of confused fighter craft. "How?" he whispered. "How does one ship defeat an entire fleet?" His answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kethmore, who had been observing the battle from his research vessel, opened a communication channel. "Admiral," the crystal being said, his form flickering with what looked like sympathy. "You cannot defeat these humans with conventional tactics. They don't follow conventional physics." "Then what do we do?" "You surrender." Captain Chen's voice interrupted cheerfully. "Really, it's much easier than all this shooting. Plus, we can all go get coffee afterward. I know a great place in the Alpha Centauri system." The transmission was being broadcast across the entire nebula. Every alien government was watching their most powerful military force being defeated by a single human ship operated by people who treated impossible odds like a fun puzzle to solve. Krexvor looked around his damaged bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders. Outside, the human ship was somehow writing GG in energy trails across the nebula. "All ships," he said finally, "cease fire. We surrender." The response from the human crew was immediate and completely inappropriate. Someone started playing victory music over all communication channels. Captain Chen's voice came through, sounding genuinely pleased. "Excellent choice, Admiral. No hard feelings about all the shooting. It happens to everyone. Jenkins, send them our towing service information. Some of those ships are going to need a ride home." As the battered hegemony fleet began the humiliating process of being rescued by their former enemy, representatives from every major galactic power watched in stunned silence. The humans had just redefined what was possible in space combat. In his private cabin, Admiral Zexithara of the Confederation made a note in her personal log. Recommendation: never, under any circumstances, make the humans angry. They apparently consider physics to be optional. The age of human military dominance had begun, powered by coffee, stubbornness, and the universe's apparent willingness to bend reality for species entertaining enough to deserve it. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber on Neutral Station Alpha. The air recycling systems worked overtime to accommodate beings who breathed everything from methane to crystallized light. Ambassador Veltar of the Etherian Empire floated at the center of the assembly, her translucent form shimmering with barely controlled panic. "The situation has moved beyond military concerns," she announced. "We are facing a threat to the fundamental order of the galaxy." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. On the massive display screens, footage from the Magellan Nebula, battle played on repeat. 300 ships of the line, destroyed by a single human vessel that appeared to ignore basic physics. "The humans must be using technology beyond our understanding," rumbled General Shakth of the Vorthan War Council. His massive form cast shadows across half the chamber. "We need their secrets." "Or, we need them eliminated," hissed Ambassador Silthex of the hegemony. What remained of their government after the recent defeats had authorized any action necessary to restore their military credibility. But Dr. Kethmore floated forward, his crystal body flickering with urgent patterns. "You're all missing the point. I've spent weeks studying the humans. This isn't about advanced technology, it's about something else entirely." "Explain," demanded the council speaker, an ancient being whose species had been mediating galactic disputes for thousands of years. "I request permission to bring the ship's designer before this assembly," Dr. Kethmore said. "The human responsible for creating the Defiant Paradox has agreed to meet with us." The chamber fell silent. After 3 hours of debate, the council agreed. Whatever secrets the humans possessed, they needed to know. The meeting was arranged for the following day in the council's most secure conference room. Security protocols that had protected galactic secrets for millennia were activated. The greatest minds in the galaxy gathered, prepared for revelations that might change everything they knew about science and warfare. When the human transport ship arrived, it was smaller and more ordinary than anyone expected. No exotic energy signatures. No impossible maneuvers. Just a standard diplomatic vessel that followed all normal traffic patterns. The airlock opened, and Chief Petty Officer Marcus Duct Tape Murphy walked into the chamber. He was 45 years old, slightly overweight, and wearing coveralls that had clearly seen better days. His name tag was crooked, and he carried a thermos that smelled like coffee and motor oil. "Howdy," he said cheerfully, looking around at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "Nice place you got here, real fancy." Ambassador Veltar recovered first. Her ethereal form shifted to display diplomatic courtesy. "Chief Murphy, we are honored by your presence. We understand you designed the vessel known as the Defiant Paradox." "Yep, that's mine," Murphy agreed, unscrewing his thermos and taking a sip. "Course, calling it designed might be a bit generous. More like cobbled together from spare parts and wishful thinking." Dr. Kethmore leaned forward eagerly. "Chief Murphy, our analysis shows that your ship operates on principles that violate several fundamental laws of physics. How is this possible?" Murphy scratched his head, considering the question. "Well, see, that's where you folks made your mistake. You keep thinking physics has laws. We figured out it's more like guidelines." "Guidelines?" General Shakt's voice was a low rumble of confusion. "Sure. Like speed limits on a highway, there's suggestions about how fast you should go, but sometimes you need to drive faster to get where you're going." Murphy pulled out a wrinkled napkin and started drawing on it. "See, the universe has a sense of humor. It likes underdogs." The assembled aliens watched as Murphy drew crude diagrams on the napkin. Stick figures labeled humans faced off against much larger stick figures labeled bad guys. Arrows pointed to various scribbled notes like make stuff work better and try harder. "So we built a ship that shouldn't work but really wants to," Murphy continued. "Every time it does something impossible, the universe goes, well, that's ridiculous enough to be awesome, and just lets it happen." Ambassador Silthex's scales rippled with disbelief. "You're saying the universe itself favors your species?" "Nah, not just us. The universe likes anybody who's stubborn enough to try impossible things. We're just better at being stubborn than most folks." Dr. Kethmore's crystal body was flashing rapidly now, processing this information. "But Chief Murphy, how do you make technology that runs on stubbornness?" "Easy. You don't build what you think will work. You build what you want to work, then you refuse to accept that it won't." Murphy took another sip from his thermos. "Take the main drive system. It's basically a coffee maker hooked up to a quantum flux capacitor I found in a surplus store." "A coffee maker?" Professor Yithandra's 6 arms waved in agitation. "That's impossible!" "Lady, I've been making impossible things work for 23 years. Started when I fixed my first car with duct tape and determination. The trick is convincing the universe that your solution makes sense emotionally, even if it doesn't work scientifically. Murphy reached into his pocket and pulled out a roll of silver tape. This here is the most important technology in human space. Duct tape. Fixes anything, holds everything together, and it's got this attitude like, I don't care what's wrong, I'm gonna make it right. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as species representatives tried to process this information. The humans weren't using advanced physics, they were using advanced attitude. Chief Murphy, the council speaker said slowly, are you telling us that your ship is held together with adhesive tape and optimism? Among other things, yeah. Also got some baling wire, a lot of coffee stains, and about 15 different types of good intentions. Murphy seemed completely serious. The key is making sure all the parts want to work together, like a family, but with more explosions. General Schacht leaned forward with interest. Could other species learn these techniques? Murphy considered this carefully. Well, you could try. But it takes a special kind of crazy to look at impossible odds and think, challenge accepted. Most folks are too sensible. What do you mean? Dr. Kethmore asked. See, when you smart types hit a problem, you analyze it, study it, figure out the proper solution. When us humans hit a problem, we go, I bet I can fix this with stuff from the garage and start welding random parts together until something works. Murphy pulled out his communicator and showed them a picture of the Defiant Paradox's engine room. It looked like a mad scientist's workshop had exploded inside a hardware store. Cables and pipes ran in impossible tangles. Warning signs were posted everywhere, but someone had drawn smiley faces on most of them. This is the heart of our faster-than-light drive, Murphy explained proudly. That big thing in the middle? That's a washing machine I converted into a quantum phase synchronizer. Works great. Plus it keeps our uniforms clean. The aliens stared at the image in growing horror and fascination. This wasn't technology. This was barely controlled chaos that somehow produced miraculous results. The secret, Murphy continued, is that every piece of equipment on that ship believes it's part of something important. We talk to the machines, treat them like friends, give them names. The coffee maker thinks it's saving the universe one cup at a time. The weapons systems think they're protecting their family. The hull plating knows it's keeping everyone safe. You anthropomorphize your technology? Professor Yathandra asked. If that means we treat our machines like people, then yes, ma'am. Turns out, when you ask nicely and say please, even inanimate objects try harder. Ambassador Veltar's form was flickering rapidly now. Chief Murphy, this explains much about human psychology, but how does it result in military superiority? Murphy's face grew serious for the first time during the meeting. Because when you're fighting for something you believe in, with equipment that wants to help you succeed, using methods that shouldn't work but do anyway, you become very hard to stop. He stood up, suddenly looking less like a simple mechanic, and more like someone who had built weapons that could rewrite reality. See? You folks think war is about having the best technology or the smartest strategies. For humans, war is about refusing to quit until the job is done. The chamber fell, silent. Every representative understood now. The humans weren't just using different technology. They were using a completely different philosophy of existence, one where determination and ingenuity could overcome any obstacle. One more thing, Murphy added, screwing the cap back on his thermos. Captain Chen asked me to mention that Earth is always looking for allies. We like sharing coffee and showing folks how to make impossible things work, but we really don't like it when people try to hurt our friends. The message was clear. The galaxy could join the humans as partners, or face them as enemies. Either way, the age of human influence had begun. 6 months after Chief Murphy's revelation, the galaxy was a very different place. Military academies across known space had added new courses to their curriculum, applied impossibility studies, creative problem-solving, and advanced stubbornness. Tactics. The results were mixed at best. The Vorthan Empire's first attempt at human-inspired engineering had produced a warship that exploded spectacularly during its maiden voyage. The Etherian Federation built a vessel that only functioned, when no one was looking at it directly, making combat operations extremely difficult. The Aquarian Collective created a ship that worked perfectly but only in water, limiting its usefulness in space warfare. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room of Terran Defense Command, watching the galaxy's leaders struggle to understand concepts that came naturally to humans. On the main display, Admiral Rodriguez was explaining the latest crisis to an assembled group of alien ambassadors. "The ancient weapon has fully activated," the Admiral reported. "It's called the Reality Engine, and it was built by a species that died out about 50,000 years ago. Our intelligence suggests it has the power to unmake entire star systems." The holographic display showed a massive structure in the galactic core, surrounded by swirling energy patterns that hurt to look at. Ships that got too close simply stopped existing, not destroyed, but removed from reality itself. Ambassador Veltar's ethereal form flickered with worry. "Our greatest fleets cannot approach within 10 light-years of the device. Every probe we send is eliminated before it can gather useful data. The hegemony has volunteered what remains of their forces for a direct assault," General Shakth rumbled. "It would be a suicide mission, but it might buy time for evacuation." Admiral Rodriguez looked grim. Evacuating the galactic core would mean abandoning 17 billion people across 43 inhabited systems. That's not acceptable. Captain Chen cleared her throat. "Sir, if I may?" All eyes turned to her. She was still holding her ridiculous coffee mug, still wearing a uniform that looked like it had been through several wars, still radiating that impossible human confidence that made the universe bend around her. "Captain," Admiral Rodriguez said, "the Defiant Paradox is powerful, but this is beyond even your capabilities. The reality engine is erasing things from existence. We're not sure physics even works normally in that region of space anymore." "Physics has never worked normally around our ship anyway," Captain Chen pointed out. "Besides, this sounds like exactly the kind of problem we're good at solving." Dr. Kethmore, who had become something of an expert on human psychology, flickered with concern. "Captain, my analysis suggests that even your ship's impossible capabilities cannot overcome this threat. The weapon operates on principles that predate current universal constants." "That's interesting," Captain Chen mused. "So it's running on old physics, like ancient cosmic laws that got updated over time?" "Essentially, yes. The reality engine appears to be enforcing an older version of reality where different rules applied." Captain Chen smiled, and every alien in the room felt a chill of recognition. They had learned to fear that particular expression. It meant a human was about to do something impossible. "Well then," she said cheerfully, "sounds like we need to introduce it to the current version. Jenkins, are you listening in?" "Always, Captain," came the familiar voice over the intercom. "I'm already in the engine room making modifications." "What kind of modifications?" Admiral Rodriguez asked nervously. "Oh, the usual. I'm upgrading our reality stabilizers and installing some temporal compatibility patches. Also, I found a manual for the universe in a used bookstore on Earth. Turns out there's a troubleshooting section." The assembled aliens looked at each other in growing alarm. The humans were planning to fix an ancient weapon of mass destruction, using what sounded like technical support documentation. "Captain," Ambassador Silthex hissed, "surely you cannot be serious about facing this threat alone." "Who said anything about going alone?" Captain Chen asked. "We'd love company. Any of your ships want to tag along and help save the galaxy?" The silence that followed was telling. Every alien representative wanted to help, but none of their vessels could survive in the reality-distorted space around the weapon. "I thought so," Captain Chen said without any judgment in her voice. "No worries, we'll handle it, but I do have one request." "Anything," Admiral Rodriguez said immediately. "If we don't make it back, make sure everyone knows we tried. And maybe put up a monument or something. Jenkins would like that. He's always wanted to be famous. Captain, Dr. Cathmore said softly, what makes you think you can succeed where entire fleets have failed? Captain Chen took a long sip of coffee and considered the question. Around her, representatives of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy waited for an answer that might determine the fate of billions of lives. Because, she said finally, we're human. We don't know how to quit. We're too stubborn to die. And we've never met a problem that couldn't be solved with enough coffee and creative thinking. She stood up and headed for the door. Besides, someone built that thing using old rules. We're going to show it the new rules and explain very politely why it should shut itself down and stop bothering people. And if it refuses to listen? General Shaxth asked. Captain Chen paused at the doorway and grinned. Then we'll have to get creative. Boom Boom has been working on some new weapons concepts, something about weaponized friendship, and missiles powered by good intentions. Should be interesting to field test. The transmission ended, leaving the assembled leaders of galactic civilization sitting in stunned silence. The humans were heading off to face a weapon that could unmake reality itself, and they seemed to think it would be fun. 3 days later, the UES Defiant Paradox departed Earth orbit for what might be the last time. The ship looked even more patched and improvised than usual. New modifications had been bolted, welded, and in some cases apparently wished into place. Someone had painted Universe Tech Support on the hull in bright yellow letters. The journey to the galactic core took 2 weeks. During that time, every major government monitored the ship's progress. The Defiant Paradox ignored normal space lanes, cut through dimensions that didn't officially exist, and at one point appeared to take a detour through a black hole for what Captain Chen described as sightseeing purposes. When they finally reached the reality engine, the ancient weapon was even more terrifying than the reports had suggested. It was massive beyond comprehension, a structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Space around it was wrong in ways that made experienced pilots weep. Energy patterns danced through the void in colors that had no names. The Defiant Paradox approached without hesitation. Attention, reality engine, Captain Chen broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You're causing problems for a lot of people, and we're here to help you work through your issues. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy beams that could erase mountains struck the human ship. Reality itself twisted around them, trying to remove the Defiant Paradox from existence. The ship ignored all of it. I can see you're upset, Captain Chen continued conversationally. That's understandable. You've been running on obsolete software for 50,000 years, but we're here to help. Jenkins, initiate the universe compatibility update. What happened next was impossible to record properly. Every sensor in the galaxy registered it differently, and most simply gave up and displayed error messages. Witnesses later described seeing the Defiant Paradox somehow arguing with the ancient weapon, showing it documentation that proved it was violating current universal building codes. The reality engine, faced with polite but firm evidence that it was operating illegally according to modern cosmic law, attempted to defend its position. This resulted in what human technical reports later described as the largest customer service call in galactic history. The conversation lasted 6 hours. At the end of it, the reality engine quietly shut itself down and transmitted an apology to every inhabited system in the galaxy. It also requested instructions for proper disposal of ancient superweapons, which Captain Chen was happy to provide. When the crisis was over, the Defiant Paradox returned to normal space and sent a simple message to Earth. Problem solved. Reality. Engine was just confused about the current universal terms of service. Everything's fine now. P.S. Jenkins wants hazard pay for arguing with a cosmic force. I think he's earned it. The age of human galactic leadership had officially begun, built on the revolutionary principle that the universe was basically reasonable if you explained things properly and offered to share your coffee. In the years that followed, other species slowly learned to embrace human methods. They discovered that determination, creativity, and a healthy disrespect for impossible odds could indeed reshape reality. The galaxy became a more interesting place, filled with ships held together by optimism and weapons powered by the sincere desire to protect one's friends, but none of them ever quite matched the original. The UES Defiant Paradox remained the most impossible ship in the galaxy, crewed by humans who treated universal constants as suggestions and considered "it can't be done" to be an invitation rather than a warning.